It is chilly out here in Korea. Normally I fancy a more tropical place, a place with durian would be great, would be nice. But anyhow, I find myself here in the my favorite natural farmer's residence, where we plan on possibly launching some form of a healing center. Nothing's in stone yet, but we have lots of ideas. This is a place where, he's farming in the most natural capacity possible without any use of fertilizers or chemicals or pesticides, insecticides, so on and so forth. But that's the background. What I wanted to talk about today was, do we really know what our body needs? And do we really love our body? Or is it all an illusion? Because as I am starting to learn about natural hygiene, and as I am starting to do regular fasts, I came out of a 48-hour fast maybe a week ago, and now I'm in the middle of another fast that I started yesterday, so it's a little over 36 hours or so. I've come to realize that perhaps I've been living in hedonism when it comes to eating. And so lots of people will say this, even some relatives that have passed that were very significant to me said something similar, that, life is short, so I want to be happy by eating things that I know are not healthy, but in this momentary happiness, I feel fulfilled, I feel happy. So, right now I'm asking you, is that really happiness? Is eating something that tastes good momentarily and filling the belly, stuffing the belly, really happiness? It makes me ask the question, do we know what happiness is at all? It seems that we should find happiness in things that don't damage the body, that don't damage the mind. Why do we find happiness in stimulation, in enervation, as Dr. Herbert might say? It's a form of addiction, it's a form of drugs. We are all addicted to food. This is what I am coming to realize, because what I also realize is the majority of cases of illnesses, if you don't go to such a far extent, can be healed by simply not eating. But make sure you drink lots of water, because you're probably in a dehydrated state. But point being is that we don't really know what happiness is. Just like we don't really know when we have to fast. So even the natural farmer that I respect most says this. He says that when he is sick, he will do these things like raw eating or fasting. But until he sees that point, he doesn't see the reason to, because there's no clear and evident sign that he is sick. Many people around me say it like this. They say that they would get more stress if they weren't able to eat what they eat that they know is not good for the body. So they would, again, rather eat that and be happy, or convince themselves that they are happy, than actually be healthy. And so now I am asking you, perhaps don't you think that this form of happiness is a mirage, an illusion? Perhaps we're so far from nature and its simple needs, right, and its simple happinesses, that we forgot how to enjoy the little things. And so we're on an endless search, similar to consumerism, right? We're in an endless search for something better. when better is not really better for the body. So, for example, cooked foods. It's one thing if you're cooking sweet potato or chestnut or something very simple like that, which is, again, not ideal, but it's low burden when it comes to natural hygiene. But it's another thing if you're doing these lavish cooked meals with all these different kinds of things and, all these different kinds of seasonings and ingredients, all of which you wouldn't be eating if it wasn't seasoned and if there was no salt, because there'd be no taste. So we're well adjusted to a very addictive and very enervating, very stimulating taste. So we can't even enjoy eating without being stimulated. So one who is not overeating would find more than enough pleasure. In fact, more pleasure, more satiation from eating foods that were consistent with our anatomy. These raw fruits, raw leafy greens, raw nuts and seeds. This would be perfectly enough, more than enough. But for us, this isn't so. For most of us, this isn't so. Because again, we are well adjusted to a very unhealthy reality. Here, give me a second here. I'm just going to adjust the camera. It's kind of leaning. Similarly, lots of people around me say that when they are sick, that's the right time for them to take action. But as I am doing now, I don't have much of any symptoms of discomfort. I am preemptively cleaning out the body. So I suggest to you that perhaps we should be more proactive and preemptive in our approach. That we shouldn't wait for something to blow up in our body. Rather, before things go wrong, we should do the right thing. So in the same sense, we should recognize that we do not know how to read the body's signals. We have not loved the body up to this point. Most of us, some of us perhaps this is not so, but most of us have lost connection with how to read the body. The body needs a reset. The body needs to realize that this continuously adding of seasonings and salts and so on to make food that wouldn't taste good is very unnatural. It's very enervating. Not only does it take energy to prepare the foods, it takes an enormous amount of energy to digest them and to eliminate the toxins that come with them, the toxemia that arises from them. So perhaps it's a better idea for us to be more preemptive and more proactive before the problem arises, and again, allow the body to rest and heal and to regenerate. Perhaps it's time for us to love our body really, not this false idea and illusion or delusion of love, which is I'm eating something very stimulating, so that's how I love my body. We must recognize that's not love at all. It's a skewed form of love, which can also be interpreted as hate. Only one who does not love their body would put something that is not whole into their body. Now, I admit, sometimes it's very hard to eat raw in Korea, especially as one who doesn't have lots of money. So sometimes I have to eat what's in front of me. And sometimes those are sweet potato. Rarely it is rice. Sometimes that is quinoa. Sometimes it is chestnut. But I always know that this is not the best thing for the body. So when I have a good, environment and I have the choice, most of what I am eating is going to be raw, is going to be fruit, is going to be leafy greens, is going to be nuts and seeds in its whole and natural state, because that's what creates a whole and natural human being. But we think our unwhole happiness, right? Our cooked happiness is enough. Or, we keep searching for these pleasures that are false. The body is not happy, yet you convince your body that it is happy. You've corrupted the files. The electrical circuits are damaged, and therefore you keep searching for these things. And so when you are sick and there comes a time for a fast, you don't even recognize the signal. Something has to blow up. Something has to go very, very wrong for a lot of people to wake up. Why don't we treat the body well? Why don't we wake up? Why don't we love the body before something blows up, and stop convincing ourselves of this false idea of happiness? So really ask yourself, what is happiness? Or what Krishnamurti might say, what is joy? Toss aside this superficial matter of happiness and our pursuit of happiness. Perhaps when one lives whole, when one gives one's attention and one's energy towards the whole things in life, eating whole food, but also giving your body a chance to regenerate and create those baby-like cells, perhaps, we should stop ingesting these unwhole things and question ourselves, are we really happy in our current state? Or are we very complacent? This is the most tough subject of them all, folks. The most sensitive subject. Because it reveals too much. It reveals that we are not living under the correct tenets. If you want to call it God, if you want to call it nature, if you want to call it cosmic law, if you want to call it anatomy, if you want to call it biology, it doesn't really matter. It's just that we are not living according to the natural laws of life, and we must recognize that. We must recognize that one who loves himself or herself must live closer to these laws. Love must be whole, not partial, not skewed. So I'm probably going to make another video more in depth about what I read, but there's a certain kind of, this is something that Dr. Herbert was mentioning. There's a certain kind of insect where if you give it all the food it wants, it dies within a couple weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. But if you essentially put it on a fast and barely give it much food at all, it lives for months. A chicken heart, there was a study, I forgot exactly who, I'll go more in depth looking into the book. There was a study done on a chicken heart, and they found that as long as you clean the wastes of the chicken heart could theoretically last forever. And they came to the conclusion that your cells could theoretically last forever in a state in which there are no metabolitic wastes piling up. Do you think that state can come about if we are overeating and eating the things that are causing enervation and a metabolic waste buildup? These cooked foods, these seasonings, these foods that don't even taste good, but we make them taste good, and we forcefully eat them, and we forcefully habituate ourselves towards them? No, that is not possible, and that is very selfish of us to think that we know better than what nature, the program that nature has created. So man is suffering a lot, thinking that he is better than nature. So in that case of the chicken heart, what that proves to us is that if we are diligent and natural and peaceful towards our body, then technically we could live forever, theoretically. And if not forever, at least a very long time. And this time that we live isn't going to be a short, ejaculatory blast, but a long-lived, fulfilled, enjoyed life. a life full of meaning. We have no meaning anymore since we are so far from nature and ourselves, our inner nature. So perhaps you should ask this question to yourself. What is really happiness? One of my very dear close friends, Cunny, walking by here. So I think we have to revisit what simplicity means. And we have to wonder, why are we not fulfilled with that which is simple? What is it in us that thinks that we are not complete in ourselves? What is it in us that thinks that the simple just ain't enough? We have to go look for those lavish pleasures, those lavish stimulations. And if we loved ourselves, would we look for these things? I think not. I know not. The example of a bear coming out of hibernation. Of course, he stored up lots of reserve and fats in his tissues, just like man should do before he goes on a fast. He shouldn't be fat, but he should have good nourishment. She comes out of the hibernation and she breastfeeds her baby. The salmon, often from weeks to months, swimming upstream on a fast, it almost seems like they get stronger without food. Why do we think eating all this unnecessary food will give us strength, will make us stronger, will make us happier? It is an illusion. The answer is not starvation, but the most of us are way off the target. So take this into consideration. Do you really want to live a unintegrated, cooked life? Or would you rather have a life that is whole, that is raw, uncooked, in its original natural state? Without this excess stimulation and waste. We owe it to Earth, we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the genetics that we will pass down. We owe it to God, we owe it to nature. That's all I have to say. I love you guys. Until next time.